Welcome to Selling in the Motor Trade, in association with Automotive Management and SMT. This is the weekly podcast where we share best practice, tips, and ideas on how to sell more cars, improve your service department, and generally put more profit into your dealership or dealer group. I'm your host, Simon Bowkett, or some of you might already know me as Skippy. And firstly, I want to say thank you for taking the time to tune in. Hi and welcome back. This is the third in the series on how to deal with the objection, I want to think about it. Now, if you've not heard the first two, you might want to go back and have a listen to those before you dive straight into this one. Because the first two, we talk about the psychology about why people want to go and think about it and other things you could do before that objection comes up. So I strongly recommend go and have a listen to those ones first, because we're on technique number, I think it's 8 at the moment or something like that. So let's have a look at another one. This technique here is a personality technique. Again, you've got to have great rapport with people to pull this one off. Actually, probably even more rapport with this one, almost to the point of banter. And I like this one with the blue collar worker, the butcher, baker, candlestick maker, someone that you're having great rapport with and banter. You know that type of customer. And they say, I want to think about it. Take the pressure off. Yeah, sure, I understand that. Buying a car is a big decision and shouldn't be taken lightly. Here's my business card. I'll email through the electronic brochure on that and all the details of that car for you. Now, my only days off is every second Tuesday. I'm here at 8 o'clock most evenings to get hold of me there. Something so they think they're leaving. But then we can go into, hey, but listen, in half an hour's time, when you're having a beer with your mates down the road in the pub, you tell them about how nice that Hilux is. When they ask you, why didn't you go ahead with it? What will you say? When half an hour's time, when you're having a beer with your mates down the road of the pub, and you tell them about how nice that Hilux is, when they say, well, why didn't you order it? Or why didn't you go ahead with it? What's the real reason you're going to tell them? Can you see how we're almost getting a third party to ask? Now, clearly you're not going to do that for the lovely old couple buying the last car they ever think they're going to own. You'd have to change it lots. Well, in fact, you could. I can remember many years ago, Ricelip Honda. I was there with a lady called Amanda. And I think it was Amanda. Yeah, it was. Okay. And she turned around. Amanda, it wasn't Amanda. It'll come to me in a second who it was. Okay. And she turned around and said, Skippy, will you come and speak to these people? Okay. And there's just something I'm missing. It was Angela. I knew it would come to me. There's something I'm missing. I just don't know what it is. Now, if one of our trainers is ever in your business, or if I'm in your business, introduce us as Simon from head office, not the sales trainer, because that's super difficult. Just Simon from head office. So I went out with Angela. I said, hi, how are you? Is Angela looking after you right? Oh, yes, she's brilliant. She's sensational. So can I ask you a cheeky question? She said, yeah, of course. Listen, in half an hour's time, when you're home and talking to your family and friends about how nice that Jazz is, when they ask you, are you going to go ahead with it? What do you think you'll say? You see how I softened it twice there for that lovely older customer? The first one was in half an hour's time when you have a beer with your mates down the road. When they ask you, why didn't you go ahead with it? What will you say? This one, in half an hour's time when you're having talking to your family and friends about how nice the Jazz is, when they ask you, are you going to go ahead with it? What do you think you'll say? Okay, it was just softened a bit. Okay. She said, probably not, dear. Oh, okay. Could I ask why? She said, oh, the Jazz is a nice car, but my mother's still alive. You might not think so at my age, but she is, and she's in a home, but we still pick her up 2 or 3 times a week. And the back seat of that Jazz is just so uncomfortable. Thankfully, Angela had a brainwave and said, oh, did you adjust the headrest in the back seat? Sorry? We adjusted the headrest in the back seat. The lady sat in the car and she turned around and said, oh, George, whatever the guy's name was, that's so much better. Here's the point of this. It's the same technique, but we softened it, okay? Angela sold the Jazz that day. But was she, the customer, going home to think about the Jazz? Or had she mentally written it off? No, she'd mentally written it off. Now, why didn't the customer say that to Angela? Oh, why didn't she say, Angela, the car's just not right for us? I think because she just didn't want to offend Angela. I think that's the real reason that objection come up there. And without using that technique, if we couldn't identify what it was, Angela wouldn't have sold him that car there. Okay, so try that one and twist it. Even if you've got a company buyer, hey, listen, in half an hour's time, when you're back in the office, when you're talking to work colleagues about how nice that A6 is, when they ask you, are you going to go and order that one? What do you think you'll say? Really what you're doing with this technique is just getting a third party, a third person to metaphorically ask the question, why aren't you going ahead with it? Try it, see how that one works for you. Now, we can't do a podcast on the objections I want to think about it without covering the Columbo. I was taught this on my very first training in the motor trade through some videos. Oh, by the way, if you're under 25, you're going to have to go and ask your parents what a videotape was. I think it might have even been Betamax. Okay, that's where Tom Styles, I think it was, Go Training. I know it was Go Training. I think the man was Tom Styles. And I think it was Betamax cassette videotapes things. Anyway, this one is where I first learned it all those years ago, and you've probably come across it. It's called the Columbo. Again, if you're under 25, I'm sorry for being patronizing here, but there used to be a TV program around the world called Columbo. Peter Fawkes, I believe, was the man who played it. And he was famous for investigating a crime. He'd ask all the questions in the world. How do you know the dead guy? What time did you arrive at the party? Did you arrive by yourself? Did you leave by yourself? Is there anything else you can think of to help the investigation? No? Okay, well, here's my card. If there is, please give me a call. He's famous for walking away and then stopping, turn around and saying, oh, just one more question. How long have you been sleeping with the maid? He'd ask the question to catch him off guard. The suspect would go into, I'm sorry, how did you know? And he would then solve the crime by catching people off guard. And that's where the Columbo technique can work for that customer says, I want to think about it. So again, you've been through the whole process. Customer says they want to think about it. Almost at the death, when you're walking the customers to the door, you might turn around and say, oh, Bob, if there was just one thing that's stopping you going ahead with this vehicle, what would that one thing have been? It's almost when they think they're leaving, it's that monthly payment. It's the color of the car. It's the mileage on it. Again, it's just designed to get it right at the end. Listen, it can work for you. A little concern I have with it, you're actually at the front door at this stage when you actually found out what the objection is. Better than when they're at home, I suppose, but you might want to try one of the other ones. But that's called the Columbo. You've probably been mentioned this by your sales manager anyway, if you're a salesperson in the business. Okay. Oh, also, a variation of this, I heard this from an ex-Pendle trainer, I think Greg Rigby's Pendle company. The variation of that was the handshake. Now, I don't know if this was actually what they trained or if in Chinese whispers it's been embellished over the years. This is like the story of the keys getting thrown on the roof of the car. I hear that all the time about Greg Rigby's Pendle training company, but I don't know if anyone's actually thrown the keys of a customer's car on the roof of a car. Goodness me, I hope not. If you have, what were you thinking? Okay, I can't believe that would have worked, back in the 80s, whenever it was. It definitely would not work now. And I think it's been embellished. I don't think anyone ever did that. But this is one that I've heard. Apparently comes from the Pendle organization. It's a variation of the Columbo. The way I was told it's called the handshake. So as customers are leaving, they'll say, yeah, sure, here's my business card. There's a brochure, because bear in mind, they're back in the 80s. Okay, we give them the brochure. They go to shake their hand. Okay, of course, this is pre-COVID-19. They go to shake their hand. And as they're shaking their hand, they're holding their hand. They'll stand right back down or sit right back down and say, hey, listen, Bob, if there was one thing that stopped you wanting to go ahead with that car, what would it have been? Guys, I struggle with that one. I envision myself holding on to the customer so they can't get out of there. Okay, but that's a variation on the Columbo. Now, here's another one I hear in training that's non-motor trade. You may have heard it in the motor trade, but it's called the Benjamin Franklin close, whenever I've heard it coming from an American trainer. I was actually told it was the Bob Hawke close in Australia. He was a politician. He was our Prime Minister in Australia. I'm guessing it's probably called the Margaret Thatcher technique in the UK, but it's a politician's technique, okay? And the way I was told it was a Benjamin Franklin. Get yourself an A4 sheet of paper and turn around and see if I can get the American accent the way it was told to me. A very good friend of mine, my business partner, David Martin in America, he was going to laugh at my accent now. But we turn around and say something along the lines of this. Our great leader, Mr. Benjamin Franklin, whenever he had a difficult decision to make, what he would do is get a legal pad out. And he'd write down right in the middle of it a line, and he'd on one side, he'd write all the reasons for going ahead with a particular situation and all the reasons for not going ahead on a particular thing he needed to make the decision on. Now, if it's good enough for our great leader, Mr. Benjamin Franklin, maybe it's good enough for you and I purchasing a motor car. So let's go through all the positives and the reasons why you should go ahead with it. Number one is it's the car that's got the size that was really, really important for you to get the dogs in the back of the car. It's actually got the adaptive cruise control that was really important for those long journeys down to Cork on that motorway. It's actually in the color that you said that you and Mary really, really liked. It fits into that budget that you told me you were hoping to achieve. We can have this on the 16th of next month in plenty of time before the school holidays start. So you've got time to take it down to Cork on those holidays that are coming up. And then you turn around and say, now what's the downside of going ahead with that? And slide the piece of paper and the pen over to the customer. And the only downside is the price. And you can find out what the objection is. Now, again, I will not knock any other trainer. I'll just tell you my experience. I've struggled with that one. I think why I struggle with it is, number one, my writing is really, really bad. Look at it on the back of that flip chart. Horrendous. Maybe the customers can't read it. And number two, for me, it sounds like a technique and it's too technique-ish. And maybe it's in my mind, but I think customers almost smell a rat with it. So you might adjust that, okay, by turning around and just do the whole lot verbally, okay? And you just turn around and this one, it's the Margaret Thatcher technique. It's the same thing really, but it's just done verbally. And to remember this is, I think what you're really asking me. So a customer wants to think about it. Yeah, sure. I understand that. Buying a car is a big decision and shouldn't be taken lightly. But I think what you're really asking me is what are all the advantages of going ahead with that car? Well, the advantages are it's got the bigger space that you want in the back to fit the dog in the back of the vehicle. It's got that adaptive cruise control that was very important to you for that long journeys down to Cork that you go to regularly. It's in that budget that you're telling me you're hoping to achieve. It's that color car that you told me Mary and yourself really, really like. We could have it on the 16th of next month in plenty of time before the school holidays start. What's the downside of going ahead with it? Or I would assume today, so it sounds like we found the right car for you. Should we secure that for you? Or ask your closing question. So listen, did you want to go ahead and do that over the 36 months? Or is it more comfortable over the 48? So that technique there is, I think what you're really asking me. Now we can use that in lots of different parts of the process. Now, here's another one for you. This one here, I'm almost certain you've heard your colleagues use. And I would argue that it might be one of the worst things you could ever say to a customer. No, that's not true. One of the worst things you could ever say to a customer is, when's the baby due and she's not pregnant? Okay, there's a lot of other worse things you can say. But this is going to be up there in securing a deal from a customer, getting them across the line. And that phrase is there anything I can do to get you to buy the car while you're here now? I know you've heard it. You may have used it yourself. Let's have a look at the psychology behind that phrase. I think there's 3 key problems with it. Problem number 1, is there anything I can do to get you to buy the car while you're here now? Doesn't it smell of desperation? And that desperation coming out of us, it pushes customers away. Back in our single days, if you were ever desperate in that nightclub situation, did it ever work for you? Oh, of course it didn't. Or if it did work, what was the quality of the deal like? Maybe not the best. And when you say, is there anything I can do to get you to buy the car while you're here today? You're pushing people away from you. Problem number 1. Problem number 2, is there anything I do to get you to buy the car while you're here today? You're using the word buy. And buy implies shelling out money. People like to own things, but buy, the barriers come up. How many times have we been told, don't buy on the day, don't buy this? Buy implies shelling out money. Now, I'll give you an example of that. I would love to own a Cirrus SR22. That's an airplane. I really would. I'd love to own one, but I'm not sure I'd like to buy a brand new one, because that implies shelling out £780,000, which would hurt. I like to own one, but buying, it's got a different connotation. Here's the third problem with, is there anything I can do to get you to buy the car while you're here today? I believe in one foul swoop, you've created a shopper. Because you psychologically told the customer, there's more money up my sleeve. All that trust and rapport that you built up, in one foul swoop, you've said, hey, I'm just a scumbag salesperson. Make sure you check my price with someone else before you go ahead with it. More likely, the customer's going to say, yeah, is there anything I can do to get you to buy the car while you're here today? When they're driving down the road, they're thinking, he had more money up his sleeve there. We've not got the best deal there. I can't put my finger on it, but I'm certain there's more money there. So try and avoid it. I know you've heard it, but change it to one of the other things. Listen, I'd hate to think you leave here. You get to those traffic lights. You turn around to one another and you say, hey, listen, if only he'd done such and such, we would have gone ahead with it. If only he's done X, Y, Z, we would have gone ahead with it. Might sound similar, and it is, but it's not using those exact words. Hey guys, this is lots of stuff that we talk about in our book, The Words That Sell Cars. The words really make a huge difference. In fact, that's all selling is using the words and how they influence our customer. So that's one. I know you've heard it. You know what? If you don't close them there and then, I don't think you'll see that customer again. You created that shopper there. Okay. So change it, twist it and change it and make it yours. Now on our Sales Fitness Masterclass, we talk about, I think it's 16 different in total. We've probably given you enough at this stage on a podcast. Any more, listen, drop me a line and say, if you didn't like those, I think I've done 10 there, okay? Search the other modules there, the other episodes there. If you don't like those 10, hey, listen, drop me a line and say, none of those 10 work for me. I'll give you some more there as well, okay? We don't want to give you everything. Hey, listen, clearly, I'd love you to go and have a look at our sales fitness program and see how that can help with your sales team. And also when we talk about our negotiation and closing skills, we do a one-day course purely on all of that. So listen, I hope you got some ideas out of this one, and I'll see you on another episode. That just leaves me to say that all details of this episode and other episodes on the selling in the motor trade can be found on our website, symcotraining.co.uk. Go there to get a copy of our book, Words That Sell Cars. Go there to sign up to a free trial of our Sales Fitness online sales training program. Easiest way to get hold of me is Simon Bowkett through LinkedIn. Thank you.